Get out of the pool. My mother's voice sliced through the heavy summer air like a warning siren. She stood on the dark stone deck, champagne glass balanced casually in her hand, her perfectly manicured finger aimed straight at my 5-year-old daughter. Her eyes didn't stay on my child for long. They flicked nervously to the older man standing beside her, the head of the homeowners association. Then she leaned in slightly and whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You're embarrassing us. You're ruining the look of this place. Take them and leave." Now, time froze. My son's pool toy slipped from his hands and floated away. His bottom lip quivered, the way it does right before he cries but tries not to. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. I didn't beg. I did something worse. I gathered my children, wrapped them in towels, and walked away in silence. Wet footprints followed us across the driveway she bragged about owning. I could feel every set of eyes on us, judging, watching, pretending not to notice. The drive home felt endless. My daughter kept asking why Grandma didn't want her there. My son said nothing at all. That quiet hurt more than any insult. Sleep didn't come that night. I wasn't angry. I was focused. At exactly 9 the next morning, a phone rang at that lake house. I wasn't there to hear it, but I know the tone. Professional. Final, ma'am. This is regarding the property on Obsidian Way. The owner has decided to terminate your lease. Because what she didn't know, what she never bothered to ask, was that the house she was showing off was never really hers. And this was only the beginning. There it was, sitting calmly at the top of the asset list, 1400 Obsidian Way. I opened the file, and the details filled my screen with quiet precision. Tenant, name, Angela. Status, active. Lease type, family arrangement. Monthly rent, $1,440. I stared at that number longer than I expected to. A waterfront home in that area could easily bring in over $4,000 a month. For years I had told myself the difference was a gift, something a daughter does out of love. But in that moment I finally saw the truth. It wasn't generosity. It was a price I was paying to be disrespected. My hand was steady as I moved the cursor to the lease options. I didn't pause to think about holidays or shared memories. I didn't remind myself that she was my mother. I clicked End Lease. A confirmation window appeared. Notice period, 60 days. Reason, owner's decision. I confirmed it. The screen refreshed. Update successful. Notice prepared for delivery. That was it. The room went silent, not the kind of silence filled with doubt, but the kind that comes with finality. I didn't call her. I didn't send a long emotional message. I didn't explain myself. I simply let the system do what it was designed to do. To my mother, I've always been a disappointment. The daughter who didn't marry up. The single mom with a sensible car and an unremarkable wardrobe. She likes to tell people I'm doing okay, saying it softly, like it's something unfortunate. What she doesn't know is that the truth lives quietly behind passwords and encrypted servers. 5 years earlier, the tech startup I helped build as a lead data architect was acquired. My equity wasn't symbolic, it was life-changing. After everything was finalized, I walked away with $5 million. I didn't spend it loudly. I didn't upgrade my lifestyle for appearances. I bought 1400 Obsidian Way. I purchased it through an LLC, buried behind legal distance and anonymity, because it had always been her dream house. I remembered her pointing at it from the beach when I was a child, talking about the life she felt she deserved. I wanted to give that to her. I believed that if I removed the struggle, she might finally choose kindness. So I became her landlord, invisible, quiet, supportive. I opened the spreadsheet on my second monitor. 2 columns told the entire story. Market rent, $4,800. What she paid, $1,440 every month. I covered the difference. Over 5 years, it totaled nearly $200,000. Money I convinced myself was love. But staring at the numbers, the illusion collapsed. I wasn't being generous, I was buying peace. I was paying the unspoken fee many children know too well. Tolerate the insults, support the image, don't disrupt the family narrative. Yesterday at the pool proved something important. Even tolerance has limits. At 10:17 a.m., the automated notice landed in their inbox. I watched the status change from sent to delivered. The reaction wasn't panic, it was denial. My phone buzzed first. My sister Chloe. She didn't ask about the kids. She didn't apologize for what happened. She wrote, "Did you do something? Mom got a weird email from the rental company. She's upset. You need to call her and apologize for yesterday. You made her look bad in front of the HOA. That told me everything." To them, the problem wasn't cruelty. It wasn't humiliation. It was that I disrupted the atmosphere. Then the messages started coming in. Not requests, not questions, attacks. "You're an ungrateful child," my mother wrote. "I tried to give you a lovely afternoon by the lake, and you caused a scene. Now the universe is punishing me with this ridiculous computer error. Fix your energy. You attract chaos." She genuinely believed the eviction notice was a technical glitch, something caused by my attitude. The denial was almost impressive. Replying would have been pointless. Defending yourself only makes sense when the other person is capable of reflection. I chose silence and opened a new browser tab instead. Instagram. My sister Chloe's story was already live. She was filming from the guest lodge, the detached studio I had personally paid to renovate. Perfect lighting, heavy filter, green juice in hand. Family drama is exhausting. She sighed to her followers. My sister showed up yesterday looking rough. And honestly, her kids were completely out of control. Anyway, ignore the negativity. Influencer bootcamp starts in 10 minutes. I watched it replay. She was mocking the sister who paid for the roof over her head, criticizing the children whose future she was benefiting from, and openly advertising a business she had no right to run there. As I closed the app, a new alert appeared on my property management screen. Incoming message from the tenant portal. My mother had filed a dispute, to whom it may concern. She wrote, her tone suddenly calm, respectful, almost frightened. This notice must be an error. I am the owner's mother. We have an understanding. Please correct this immediately or I will contact legal counsel. I looked at the harsh messages on my phone, then at the polite plea on my screen. They were insulting Jasmine the failure while begging an anonymous landlord for mercy, without realizing they were the same person. That contrast did something important. It erased my last hesitation. This wasn't family conflict anymore. This was tenants who believed rules didn't apply to them. I archived the messages without responding. Emotion had served its purpose. Now it was time for verification. The texts kept coming throughout the afternoon. My mother sent long lectures about loyalty and bloodlines. My sister sent screenshots of her engagement numbers, as if popularity could be exchanged for rent. I didn't block them. In situations like this, silence is protection, but information is leverage. Back in the portal, I saw my mother had escalated the dispute, claiming partial ownership based on family contribution. It wasn't true, but false claims on paper still require documentation. I needed evidence. I opened the vendor services tab and selected my property manager, David. Precise, thorough, no patience for excuses. I marked the request urgent for cause, reason suspected unauthorized commercial use, and possible property damage. I approved a surprise inspection within 24 hours. The report arrived the next morning at 8:15 a.m. 18 pages, high-resolution photos, detailed notes. The first few images were routine, until page 4. The custom hardwood floors in the main foyer materials I had personally chosen were severely damaged. Deep scratches cut through the grain, caused by dragging heavy furniture without protection. This wasn't normal wear. It was careless entitlement. I kept scrolling. Page 12 documented the guest lodge. It was unrecognizable. What was meant to be a quiet retreat had been converted into a full production space. Professional lighting rigs drilled into the walls. Merchandise stacked near blocked exits, and taped to the wall a printed schedule. Influencer bootcamp, admission $300 per person. She wasn't just staying there. She was operating a commercial business on a residential lease. In that moment, the emotional pain disappeared. All that remained was clarity. This wasn't a personal disagreement. It was a documented breach of contract. Multiple violations, clear evidence. And now, the next move was no longer about feelings. It was about enforcement, preservation of premises, unauthorized commercial use, violation of lease terms. I opened a fresh document. Not as a daughter, not as someone asking for understanding. As the property owner, I drafted a formal notice of lease violation and demand for correction. Every clause was cited clearly, every breach documented. I attached photographs of the damaged flooring, along with a professional repair estimate totaling $12,000. I included screenshots of my sister's ticketed events being advertised online. I didn't ask them to stop. I informed them. The security deposit was forfeited. Additional damages now exceeded $20,000. I converted the document to a PDF, uploaded it to the tenant portal, and sent it. They had spent years playing games with appearances and authority. I wasn't playing anymore. I wasn't arguing at family gatherings. I was moving the conflict into a system that didn't care about emotions, only facts. They believed they were pressuring a family member they could dismiss. They were about to meet a plaintiff they couldn't intimidate. The audit gave me leverage. The legal review gave me clarity. 48 hours later, my attorney called. His rate alone was higher than what my mother paid monthly for the house. He skipped the small talk. "Are you somewhere private?" he asked. Then he forwarded a file titled HOA Correspondence Discovery. I opened it. Inside were archived emails, meeting minutes, and official requests from the Lake House Homeowners Association. As I read, something shifted. According to the HOA records, Angela wasn't a tenant. She was listed as the owner. For 4 years, my mother had attended board meetings, voted on community matters, and hosted neighborhood events under the assumption that she held the deed. She hadn't simply stayed quiet about the truth. She had actively created a false identity. She introduced herself as the investor who purchased the property outright. She accepted compliments for renovations she didn't fund. She built social status on a story that wasn't hers. Then I reached page 14, an architectural approval request for the obsidian deck, the same deck she had ordered my children off. At the bottom was the signature line for the property owner. The name read Jasmine, but the handwriting wasn't mine. I recognized it immediately. The same looping letters that signed my childhood permission slips. the same handwriting that sent carefully worded birthday cards. She had signed my name. She had authorized construction on my property by forging my identity, all so she could continue playing the role she had sold to everyone else. That's the mechanics of status obsession. To her, the house wasn't shelter, it was proof. A costume she wore to feel important. Admitting I owned it would have meant admitting dependence, and that, to her, was unbearable. So she chose deception. She wasn't protecting a place to live. She was protecting a narrative. My lawyer interrupted my thoughts. "Jasmine," he said calmly, "forging a signature on real property documents isn't a family dispute. It's fraud, and it carries criminal consequences." We weren't discussing eviction anymore. We were discussing charges. I thought back to the pool, the way she looked at me, the certainty with which she labeled me a failure. She needed that belief to survive, because if I was successful, her entire performance collapsed. "Draft the affidavit," I said. My voice didn't shake, and arrange for a civil standby. We're reclaiming the property. For years, the line between mother and wrongdoing had been blurred. Now it was gone. She wanted to be seen as the owner. Fine. She was about to meet the reality of what happens when the actual owner takes control. 60 days passed. Angela didn't pack. She didn't make plans to leave. Instead, she sent out digital invitations for a summer solstice soiree. It wasn't denial. It was a challenge. She was betting on my silence. She believed I wouldn't do anything in front of 50 of the town's most connected people. She assumed embarrassment would protect her, that my instinct to keep family matters private would outweigh the law. She was counting on the daughter I used to be. That daughter didn't own the deed. At 6:15 p.m., I pulled up to the gated entrance. The sun was low, spilling that polished golden light across the water, the kind that makes everything look more valuable than it is. I wasn't driving my usual car. I was sitting in the passenger seat of a sheriff's cruiser. Behind us, a locksmith's van waited quietly. The deputy glanced at me. He had read the file. He had seen the fraud report. "I'm ready," I said. "Let's reclaim the property." We walked around the side of the house. Glasses clinked. Soft jazz floated through the air. Laughter carried across the deck. The party was in full motion. On my deck, Angela stood near the railing, dressed in crisp white linen, laughing alongside the HOA president. Nearby, Chloe filmed a live stream, turning her phone toward the sunset like it belonged to her. It was a perfect performance, a life built on borrowed status. The music stopped first, then the conversations faded. Guests turned one by one as the uniform crossed the lawn. Angela froze. Her smile didn't disappear, it stiffened. She placed her drink down carefully and walked toward us. Chin lifted, eyes sharp with panic masked as confidence. She chose her role instantly. "Officer," she said, voice shaking just enough to sound fragile. "Thank goodness you're here. My daughter is having an episode. She's fixated on this house and trying to ruin my event." She turned to me, pity carefully arranged for the audience. "Jasmine, sweetheart, please go home. We'll talk about this later." It was a flawless performance, but not in a room she controlled. Deputy Miller didn't look at her. He looked at me. "Ma'am?" he asked calmly. "Is this the tenant?" "Yes," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. In the sudden silence, it carried across the deck. "That is the tenant, and she is trespassing." Angela laughed, sharp, brittle. "Tenant, I'm the owner. Everyone here knows that. I designed this deck. I approved every detail." She turned desperately to the HOA president. Tell him how proud the owner is of the renovations." I didn't argue. People who have the paperwork don't need to. I reached into my bag and placed a bound file on the table beside the appetizers. Inside were the deed, the audit, and the sworn fraud affidavit. Then I set the master key down beside it. Heavy final. "The owner doesn't love you," I said quietly. "The owner evicted you 60 days ago." Angela stepped back, shaking her head. "You're lying. You couldn't afford this. I bought this house years ago." "No," I replied evenly. "I bought it so you'd have somewhere to live. I paid below market rent. I covered repairs. I let you pretend because I believed it might bring you peace." I looked around at the guests. "But you crossed a line. You forged my signature. You committed fraud." The realization moved through the crowd like a temperature drop. The elegant hostess wasn't the owner. The respected matriarch wasn't wealthy. She was occupying a house that wasn't hers. "I am the owner," I said, gesturing toward the gate. "And this event is over." Angela looked at the deputy, then at the guests, then back at me. For the first time, the image collapsed completely. No confidence, no authority, just fear. "Proceed," I said to the deputy. The property was cleared. It took 3 full days for movers to remove the rented furniture she used to make her life look impressive. And when the deck was finally empty, no music, no audience, no illusion, it was just a house again. Mind dot, it took another week for the contractors to finish the repairs. The damaged floors were restored. The walls were repainted, replacing the muted tones she loved with a clean, open white. I had the house cleared room by room, not because I believe in spirits, but because I wanted the weight of her chaos gone. I wanted the space to breathe again. Angela is now living in a small apartment near the highway. No lake view, no deck, no audience. The criminal fraud case is still moving through the courts. but the social consequences arrived quickly. The people she worked so hard to impress disappeared the moment the illusion collapsed. Without a stage, there's no performance. That first summer weekend, I went back to the lake, not to host anything, not to prove anything. I sat at the end of the dock with Ethan and Mia, our feet dangling in the water. We ate chocolate ice cream straight from the container, letting it melt onto our shirts. No one yelled. No one corrected behavior. No one cared how it looked. And in that quiet moment, I finally understood the difference between us. My mother spent her life trying to be seen. She believed status could protect her, that if she looked important enough, no one would notice how hollow she felt inside. But real security doesn't announce itself. Confidence doesn't need an audience. True power isn't owning a zip code or hosting the perfect event. It's the peace that comes from knowing you're safe, from being able to sit in silence without fear, from building a life you don't need to escape from. I own the deed to 1400 Obsidian Way. But more importantly, I own my peace, and that's something no one can fake, steal, or take away. Real wealth isn't a house. It's the freedom to walk away from people who hurt you and never look back. Pause beat if this story resonated with you. You're not alone.